I am Nakai Masatsugu from the Agency for Cultural Affairs of Japan, and I am in charge of the maintenance and improvement of historic sites and other heritage. I'm going to talk about protection policy and maintenance improvement of historic sites in Japan. In the previous lecture, Mr. Fuji explained 4 administrative stages of buried cultural properties protection, namely, comprehension and dissemination of buried cultural properties, coordination between the protection and development project, excavation research for the preservation and utilization of buried cultural properties based on the research results. In my lecture, I would like to introduce Japanese examples for the 4th topic, which is maintenance improvement and utilization of cultural properties while keeping their preservation in mind. Here is the list of contents of my lecture. I divide these 10 items into 3 sessions. The first session is about the legal system, the basic principles and the ways to formulate master plans for the implementation of maintenance improvement. I start with the relation between the law for the protection of cultural properties and the maintenance improvement, and cover the following 5 points in the slide, including the subsidy system for maintenance improvement. In the second session, I'm going to introduce several examples of maintenance improvement of Japanese sites from the viewpoint of preservation and utilization. In the third session, I'm going to talk about other Japanese examples of utilization after the maintenance improvement has been completed, as well as some recent cases of historic site management. Then, I would like to share the conclusion. This is the plan of my presentation. The law for the protection of cultural properties was already explained in the lecture by Mr. Fuji, but let us see the relevant part of the law concerning maintenance improvement, which is the topic of my session. Article 1 provides the purpose of the law. Article 109 is on the designation of cultural properties, and Article 119 describes the principle of management and restoration by owners. The purpose of the law is preservation and utilization in short. According to the law, the Minister of Education, Culture, Sports, Science and Technology may designate cultural properties when necessary for the purpose. Their management and restoration are in principle the responsibility of owners. However, there are cases when owners cannot manage or restore their cultural properties. Article 113 here stipulates that the Commissioner for Cultural Affairs may assign a local government or other juridical persons to manage or restore the properties in such cases. Then, how about the contents of management or maintenance improvement? According to Article 115, signs, explanation boards, boundary indicators, fences, and other facilities necessary for the cultural properties management should be set up. I'm going to explain the details in the later session of case examples of maintenance improvement. In the projects of management or restoration of sites, the status of a site is altered in some cases. Article 125 stipulates that the permission of the Commissioner for Cultural Affairs should be obtained to alter the current status of site, except in cases of necessity for maintenance, emergency measures against disaster, and minor effect on the preservation. This is the end of the review of the legal aspects. An owner or a managerial body is legally responsible for the management and repair of the cultural properties. Article 35 provides that the national government may grant a subsidy to them to cover a part of the necessary expenses. In Japan, most of the maintenance improvement projects are under this subsidy system. In 2018, the Law for the Protection of Cultural Properties was partially amended. A major amendment is that municipalities may formulate a plan for the comprehensive utilisation of cultural properties in the region or community, authorised by the central government. As the amendment is actually enforced from the following fiscal year, we do not yet see how things will turn out. But it is expected that the law for the protection of cultural properties will be enforced more smoothly when municipalities formulate the plans by themselves. In addition, penal regulations have become comparatively heavier in this amendment. I will now begin by discussing maintenance improvement pursuant to the law for the protection of cultural properties. One may say that the law for the protection of cultural properties of Japan simply stipulates two major issues. One is preservation, defined as reliably maintaining and passing down the intrinsic values of historic sites, including stone walls and buildings of castles, or buried archaeological features to future generations by ensuring a desirable state for them. The other issue is utilization, defined as being that people in the community enjoy the value of historic sites and properly utilize them in our modern society. Furthermore, the law emphasizes that it is important to achieve a desirable state of utilization depending on the nature of the value, as well as to actively and freely search for aspects of such attractive utilization. Such an approach may revitalize local communities. In many cases, historic sites are regarded as core elements of tourism and regional revitalization. In addition, they are used for educational programs. Maintenance improvement is the necessary work to implement the preservation and utilization I have mentioned. However, in the law for the protection of cultural properties, there is no clause explicitly describing the maintenance improvement. Then, how should we carry out such maintenance improvement? The maintenance improvement of historic sites is a methodology to harmonize the contrary elements of preservation and utilization. Therefore, it is quite important for the implementation of maintenance improvement projects to clarify the purpose of the projects by dividing them into two categories, as shown in the slide. One is for preservation, another for utilization. Maintenance improvement projects aiming at preservation include 1. Installation of signs, information boards, boundary posts, etc., as stipulated by the law. 2. Maintenance-oriented measures. And 3. Recovery from damage caused by natural degradation or disasters. On the other hand, maintenance improvement projects aiming at utilization include the categories shown in the slide. Typical cases of such works are on-site display to deepen visitors' understanding of a historic site, three-dimensional and two-dimensional reproductions, guidance facilities, etc. I will explain about such maintenance improvement later through actual examples. In any case, I am sure that the creation of various plans is the most important in implementing maintenance improvement. This diagram shows the correlation between preservation and utilization of historic sites. Protection of cultural properties has these two aspects. As this slide shows, technical measures for preservation and installation of facilities for utilization, including public opening, are categorized in the maintenance improvement. As I mentioned earlier, maintenance improvement is the work to bridge between preservation and utilization. Now, let us discuss the third topic, the current state of maintenance improvement projects in Japan. The slide shows the number and types of designated cultural properties. The cultural properties about which I'm going to explain today do not include every type of cultural property, but only those designated as historic sites or places of scenic beauty that are maintained and improved most frequently. As of April 2020, the total number of designations as historic sites reached 1,846. Classifying such sites further, the most numerous, accounting for 31%, are those categorized as ancient ruins of the prehistoric periods. The second largest category is ruins of castles and ancient capital sites, which account for 18%, followed by ruins of Buddhist temples and Shinto shrines, which account for 14%. Meanwhile, the number of designations as places of scenic beauty is 422 cases, of which a large proportion are gardens. This graph shows the trend in subsidies for maintenance improvement projects undertaken in the past 10 years. In the latest 3 years, the Agency for Cultural Affairs has provided more than 6 billion yen in subsidies per year. As the amount of this project subsidy is limited to 50% of the total project cost, the actual project costs about double. The expression of bar graphs has changed since 2015. That is, the bar graph from 2015 does not differentiate utilization, coloured in orange, from general, coloured in light blue. As a result, it is hard to distinguish between the projects for preservation and those for utilization. However, at least it is obvious that utilization projects have continuously increased since 2013. In recent years, the Japanese government has encouraged utilization projects, which may result in the increase in actual projects. The graph also shows a recent increase in disaster recovery projects. In any case, with the present condition, we cannot satisfy all demands of project subsidies in Japan. This graph shows the status of maintenance improvement depending on types and the number of projects undertaken over the past year. As you see, most of the designated cultural properties for which maintenance improvement has been implemented are ancient cities, castle-related projects. The second bar from the left. In terms of numbers, ancient ruins constitutes the largest number, and castle-related sites are the second. However, for castle-related sites, maintenance improvement has been implemented about 3 times more than ancient ruins. In addition, I will compare the project cost of each site. Here as well, you can see that castle-related projects are by far the most numerous. Nearly half of the total costs have been paid for castle-related projects. That is, the cost per project is high. Furthermore, as Japanese people generally attach a high importance to castle sites, for many different reasons, there is a general tendency towards generous subsidization with a large amount of money nationwide. Now, I will talk about the process flow until the implementation of maintenance improvement for a nationally designated historic site occurs. First of all, the Preservation and Utilization Plan is formulated. The extent to which the alteration of current status is acceptable gives great influence over the whole maintenance improvement project. After the formulation of the Preservation Utilization Plan, the current state and problems of the subject cultural property should be understood to develop the master plan for maintenance improvement. After the plan is settled, a range of surveys should be carried out for implementing the plan. Based on the results of these surveys, the baseline design should be created, and following the creation of the working drawings, the maintenance improvement project will begin. This illustrates the system to implement maintenance improvement in Japan. An owner or managerial body usually carries out the project, and the prefectural government handles management and necessary procedures. Relevant documents are filed to the national government through the prefectural government. The national government, the Agency for Cultural Affairs in this case, gives financial support and technical advice. The Agency for Cultural Affairs provides a template for the formulation of the master plan for maintenance improvement. This slide shows the contents of the master plan template. 1. Process flow and purpose of plan formulation. In particular, the purpose should be clearly expressed. 2. Existing conditions of the project site. The description should cover a slightly wider range than that of the project site, because it is presumably necessary to understand the surrounding environment, not limited to the area of the site itself. 3. To describe the investigation result and issues pertinent to the historic site. 4. Once the existing conditions of the site are understood, the basic policy for maintenance improvement should be established. 5. Then, the master plan for maintenance improvement should be developed. The purpose of the project is to resolve the problems of the site. Therefore, in addition to the master plan, specific maintenance improvement plans for preservation and utilization should be made as well. To determine the project plan, you should also consider the administrative operation and the consistency with other plans. It is also necessary to set a target through which the project is completed. 6. Finally, it is recommended to create a rendering to provide a concrete image at the completion. The next point concerns the subsidy from the national government to support maintenance improvement projects. As I mentioned in the explanation of the law, the national government may grant a subsidy to financially support the maintenance improvement of nationally designated historic sites. The owner or managerial body can apply for this subsidy. The amount of the subsidy is 50% of the expense in principle, and eligible projects are restoration, environment improvement, facilities for utilization, disaster recovery, and others, as listed in the slide. This is a case example of before and after maintenance improvement. The site is a tomb more than 1,000 years old, and so its original form had already collapsed. The master plan for maintenance improvement was established, aiming at representing the original appearance to deepen the understanding of the historic site. According to the plan, the mound covered with stones was reconstructed while preserving the remaining original. A replica of the stone chamber was also constructed for visitors to experience the inner structure. In the second session of my lecture, I would like to show many other examples of maintenance improvement implemented as nationally subsidized projects. This is the second session of my lecture. I'm going to divide session 2 into 2 parts. Part 1 provides examples of case studies of maintenance improvement for preservation of sites, and utilization-oriented cases are introduced in Part 2. Let me start with the examples of case studies of maintenance improvement aiming at preservation. 5 major types of maintenance improvement for preservation are listed here. I will show you the cases for each of the types from the next slide. This slide shows a boundary post related to number 1, information provision. The boundary post is extremely important as an on-the-spot mark to indicate the designation range of a historic site. The law for the protection of cultural properties mandates their installation and prescribes size. The material should be stone. Next, I will explain about signs. A sign provides the minimum prescribed information, such as the name of the historic site, designation date, etc. In many cases, post-type signs, like that in the photo, are installed. The law for the protection of cultural properties requires the installation of this post and stipulates description items. However, the shape of it is quite free to choose from. Here is an information board to inscribe the characters, range, and other items of a historic site. This must also be installed in compliance with the law for the protection of cultural properties. As is the case with signs, the shape is free to select. However, the contents of the description are prescribed. Now, I will talk about the examples of disaster recovery in Japan. This photo shows the damage caused by the Tohoku earthquake in March 2011. The castle in the photo is Shirakawa-jo Castle, constructed about 400 years ago in Fukushima Prefecture. The earthquake destroyed many of the stone walls. This is the ongoing recovery work of the stone walls. All fallen stones are checked to confirm their original location within the stone wall, and to determine whether or not they can be reused again as stone materials. Further, while carrying out the excavation and surveys, the recovery work proceeded based on the original masonry methods used 400 years ago. In principle, the stone walls are restored in the traditional way, using the original methods. However, modern construction techniques are partially employed to secure safety and future earthquake recovery. There are pros and cons to the introduction of modern techniques, but the decision was made after a thorough examination of all the issues. This photo shows the restored stone walls of Shirakawa-jo Castle. The stones appearing slightly whitish-grey are those newly installed. Considering the use rate of new stones, quite a number of old stones from before the earthquake have been reused. This photo was taken when the castle was reopened to the public after the recovery work. Many citizens and castle fans visited. As I mentioned earlier in the topic of the number of cases and costs of maintenance improvement, the charm and existence of castles are so significant for Japanese people that the completion of this recovery project became a symbol of recovery from the earthquake. The following slides show the damage caused by the earthquakes that occurred in Kumamoto Prefecture in 2016. As Japan is a country of frequent earthquakes, any regions or cities within Japan could be attacked by earthquakes. Furthermore, it occurs suddenly. As the Kumamoto earthquakes were epicentral earthquakes, they caused great damage to cultural properties and changed landforms extensively. The places shown in these photos are near to the epicenter, at which, you can see, the ground has sunk about 2 meters below its previous level. These photos show Kumamoto-jo Castle. symbol of Kumamoto Prefecture after the earthquakes. This castle suffered the heaviest damage. Many buildings and stone walls to support the buildings were also damaged. At present, there are many issues to examine. For all that, collapsing buildings and structures need immediate practical measures. Accordingly, we have taken emergency measures for the time being. At this stage, it is important that firm maintenance improvement policies should be established before starting recovery works. As you see, many stone walls have collapsed. As the damage is extremely heavy, the organizations concerned need to start with basic steps to first understand the state of the existing conditions of the remains. They still have a long way to recover the masonry walls. Meanwhile, although there is a basic rule that a cultural property should be preserved by using the original techniques used, an argument over what to do about earthquake resistance is rising under this situation. This photo shows the recovery and repair work undertaken around the entrance. The iron framework is used for preventing the stone walls from collapsing, as well as securing safety for the path for construction vehicles. This reconstructed building was in danger of collapse and was supported by the scaffolding to prevent collapse. The building has since been temporarily dismantled, and the stone walls are being repaired first, while examinations and various recovery works are being conducted. This is a case of emergency measures. Many stone walls have collapsed, so that the full-scale recovery work is not available for the time being. The mortar spray was used for consolidation. This photo shows repair work for the large and small castle towers. Since these towers are reconstructed buildings, the base stone walls are independently structured from the towers. So, the repair work is currently being separately undertaken for each of them. Repair of the main castle tower has almost been completed. The present repair work is on a small keep on the left. Areas around the castle tower are starting to be opened to the public. In recent years, there has also been much damage to cultural properties caused by localized torrential rain. This is a photo of damage to Kumamoto-jo Castle in Kagawa Prefecture. The lower right of the stone walls is partially collapsed in this picture, and the area coloured in orange collapsed later. There is a two-tiered set of high stone walls, each with a height of over 15 meters for each level. This is a photo immediately after the collapse. You can see the corner of the upper stage of stone wall has fallen down, keeping the stonework structure. It is observed that the collapse was caused by a landslide behind the stone wall structure after extraordinarily heavy rain. Dismantlement of the stone wall is going on. Removed stones are checked one by one to sort them into those to be reused and those to be discarded. It will take several more years to complete recovery. Moreover, Japan also suffers increasing typhoon damage, especially at risk like this mountain fortress and tumulus, where many trees grow and cause great damage when they fall. Tree management is one of the issues, and environmental improvement by cutting some trees is going on. However, when you cut too many trees at one time, it leads to the loss of durability against heavy rain. You should sufficiently examine the conditions before cutting down the trees. Now, I will show you the case of maintenance improvement for preservation. This is very close to that of disaster recovery presented earlier. However, the maintenance improvement presented here is that for repairing stone walls resulting from aging degradation. Greatly unlike the case of disaster recovery, this type of maintenance improvement can be carried out before the sudden collapse of a historic site. In other words, this maintenance improvement can be systematically implemented after closely examining the location and conditions of stone materials. This example shows a castle named Hirosaki-jo Castle in Aomori Prefecture. The stone walls that support the castle tower, the central building, are being restored. For carrying out this restoration, the castle tower building built on the stone walls must be moved. I will explain about the operations undertaken to move the building. These photos show the move of the castle tower building. As this building is not constructed in a modern way, the foundation and the building are independent from each other. Accordingly, it is possible to elevate the whole building. In ages past, this operation was carried out by human power, but this time, modern machines shown in the upper right photo were used. At this stage, rails are laid for moving the buildings. Before, wooden rail ties or rail sleepers were used, but this time, iron materials were used. However, despite the different materials, the basic method for moving it is the same. These photos show the situation of the actual move of the castle tower. It would be far easier to move it using machines, but this project invited citizens to participate in the moving event. They successfully moved the building by human power, in the same way as in olden times. Even though it was more or less like an attraction, I am sure the event was a very effective way for citizens to gain a deeper understanding of the historic site. This is the present appearance of the site. The building has been fully relocated, leaving the stone walls alone. From now on, the full-scale stone wall repair will begin. These photos show the dismantlement of the stone wall. An archaeological excavation survey is carried out at the same time. Careful works and observation are required, since they provide important information on the inner structure to restore the walls. Dismantlement of the stone walls of the castle tower foundation. The issue here is reinforcement of the foundations for earthquake resistance. As a country with frequent earthquakes, seismic reinforcement for cultural properties is required in Japan. For the reinforcement, it is inevitable to destroy a part of the inner structure of stone walls. The experts are carefully examining the method. This is the relocated castle tower. Visitors are allowed to enter for observation. This example is of maintenance improvement for a garden. The garden in the photo is that built by the former Ikeda family, a large landowner in Akita Prefecture. For this garden, maintenance improvement was undertaken to restore the original appearance of 100 years ago. This photo shows a comparatively new garden constructed in a public facility of a water purification plant in Kanazawa City, Ishikawa Prefecture. It is a Western-style garden, giving a completely different impression from Japanese traditional gardens. This photo shows a garden in Okinawa Prefecture named Shikina-en, built 200 years ago in the villa of a king of the Ryukyu Kingdom. Maintenance improvement for the garden and repair of the building are being undertaken in parallel. The next topic is disaster prevention. This is an example of fire prevention measures for a building. Many historic sites have buildings in the area, and fire prevention for such buildings is one of the important elements in maintenance improvement. Although this is a reconstructed building, it is equipped with a fire prevention system equivalent to the one for the building designated as an important cultural property. The system includes smoke detectors, fire hydrants, and water spray guns. This is an example of seismic reinforcement. An earthquake-resisting pillar. It is an example of seismic reinforcement. An earthquake-resisting pillar, marked with an arrow, is installed in an unnoticeable place and color. This is a case of maintenance improvement of a modern historic site. That is the last example of this session. Most of the structures in historic sites were made of wood or stone, but in recent years we also work with modern historic sites, as shown in these photos. The method to deal with these concrete or brick structures for maintenance improvement is still under investigation. This photo shows an island called Warship Island, on which ruins of mines and dwelling buildings remain. It was designated by the UNESCO as a World Heritage Site in 2015. After the designation, a Maintenance Improvement Committee was established, and at present, its maintenance improvement policy and methods are under consideration. Up to this point, case examples of maintenance improvement for preservation were introduced. In the next part, I will talk about the cases aiming at utilization of historic sites.